If you are shopping for knives, swords, flashlights, or other outdoor gear or EDC gear, don't forget to check out the descriptions of my videos down there. There are discount codes for custom titanium knife scales, flashlights from Neil's Gadgets. There's lots of information on how to find all the products that I use in my videos. Using linked information is your choice, but if you do, it might help you save quite a bit of money, and it really does help me bring you lots of cool content like this. So I think all of us knife enthusiasts at one point or another have been browsing Amazon, and we've seen these really inexpensive knives that have good specs and they look like they would be really useful, and we've really wondered, is that worth it? Am I going to lose my money if I buy one of those? Is it just junk, or am I buying something that's worthwhile? So today we're going to talk about a brand that I exclusively found on Amazon, and I bought a bunch of them, and we're just going to talk about whether these are functional knives and whether you might actually want one. So the brand that we're talking about today is Watchman, and they make a ton of different designs. They actually use some pretty decent steels. I'm going to go through the models that we have here, and then we'll talk about whether these are actually usable knives. All of these come in 14C28N steel. They all have some variation of a Micarta handle. Some of them look like original designs to me. Some of them might be copies. I'm sure my sharp-eyed viewers can help us out with that in the comments. If you see a copy here, please point it out. But I want to know if these are actually usable knives or if they're just kind of Chinese junk. All of these come from about $20 to about $32 in price. So they're inexpensive knives and they're definitely budget friendly. Are they actually usable? Well, let's find out. First, let's talk about the overall performance of these knives, and then we'll talk about each design kind of individually on its own. So edge retention performance, I actually tested this one pretty extensively. This is the 222. It was a bit odd. After 75 cuts, it kind of seemed like it was going dull. Sometimes that happens if the heat treatment is a bit odd and it gets a little bit of a burr. I think that's what happened with this one. After 75 cuts, it did clean itself up, and then went about 275 cuts in my edge retention test before losing its edge. You can see what that test is. I have a video of that. I'll put a link in it. I'll put a link for it. But that is a little bit low for 14C28N. It's not, however, low for the price. So a lot of knives you'll see in this price range have D2 steel or Nitro V, and that is generally going to come right in around that 275 mark for my edge retention testing, has in the past. 14C is usually better than that, so that means these are heat treated a little bit on the softer side, but for the price, that's still pretty good edge retention. It's better than you're going to get from something like a 440A or even maybe a 440C. So budget-wise, that's right about where you'd expect, and that's actually pretty good for the price of these knives. Now, this particular one that I tested had a very steep kind of axe-like edge geometry. So instead of having a nice fine slicey edge, it was kind of more of a edge like this. That doesn't tend to do as well in the test that I do, which is cutting through bamboo and then testing sharpness on paper. So something like this probably would have done a little bit better. I didn't test this one because this one's going back. So ones like this probably gonna, ones like this design, probably not gonna do as well in my testing, but it may have been a little bit artificially low. So decent edge retention, although they're not standouts. Let's talk through the individual designs. So we'll go kind of from this side and we'll go this way. This is the Watchman 205, and this is a very kind of efficient, compact knife design. You can see there's no finger guard or anything. The handle goes straight into the blade, which means what you end up with is the maximum amount of blade length per length of the actual knife. I've caused my handy ruler to materialize at the top of the screen here. So on this one, we're looking at a hair over 3 inch, about a 3 1/4 inch blade. and the overall knife is about 7¼ So you get about, what, it's like 4 inches of handle there. So it's plenty of handle. It is a bit on the round side. It's squared off enough so that it's not too bad, but this is kind of the roundest handle in the bunch, and it is a little on the small side. Even in my XL size hands, this fits pretty good, but it definitely feels like a small knife. You can see full flat grind, relatively thin behind the edge here. So this is a very slicey knife. I love the fact that it gives you the most knife per size. So there's no wasted space on your belt or in your pocket. But the only disadvantage of that is that there's no protection between your finger and the blade. So it's a little easy for your finger to ride up onto that blade there. And you do have to be a little bit careful. This would be more of an EDC fixed blade, more than like a hunting fixed blade, just because, you know, in my experience, when you're out there in the wilderness, not near any first aid or anything, it's better to have slightly safer equipment than slightly more risky. Plenty of people are going to use that for a backup skinning knife or just a backup utility knife, and it'll be just fine. But it wasn't my preferred design of this bunch. Sheath on these, actually, they do a pretty good job on the sheaths. I like that they bring the sheath up onto the handle. And what that does is it creates a blade-heavy configuration of the knife and the sheath. They all come with these standard belt clips, which I'm not a huge fan of. I'll show you what I did with the one that I'm going to keep here in just a minute. So the one that I'm going to keep of this bunch is this one. This is the Watchman 222. And it has, as you can see, a finger guard where the handle is. And it's got a bit more bulk to the handle. So in my XL size hands, this was the handle that was the most comfortable. And it still comes in at a reasonable size. So this one still comes in at about 7¼ inches there, but you lose a little bit of length in the blade. So even where I've got this sharpened to, that's only about a 3-inch blade. It was about 2¾ before I sharpened the choil on this. So this did come with a pretty big blade choil. It wasn't really doing anything because you're not going to put your finger up there because you've got a nice finger guard. So I just went ahead and sharpened it and got myself about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch more blade length out of there. I also ground the edge a little bit higher. I gave it an appleseed edge, so now you're looking at a more slicey edge angle. Again, full flat grind, decent small knife in weight. This one, I put some ulti clips on it. So I put an ulti clip on this side, put an X clip on that part of the sheath. This makes it into a great pocket sheath. You can wear this on a belt. I don't typically wear a fixed blade this size on a belt. It would be pretty easy to just put another clip, you know, for horizontal carry or something like that. I just prefer pocket carry on a fixed blade this size. You could also clip this to a vest or whatever. But this is one of the few small fixed blades that I've ever bought where I didn't have to redo the sheath. I used the factory kydex sheath, which is a good reason to buy this particular brand, as they have great sheaths for the price especially, but really just in general. So great fit in the hand for me, no hot spots, no sharp areas or anything. The jimping right there is very traction-y. I'm of the opinion that if you make a blade and knife handle the right way, you don't need a lot of jimping, but this one is not too aggressive. It's not going to rub a blister. It just feels like a lot of grip. So if you like jimping, you're going to like this one. This one does not have any jimping, and some of these other ones don't either. So I'll point that out as we go along. So this was my favorite, and this would be my overall recommendation of all these, just as an everyday carry fixed blade. The tips on these, as you can see, are kind of thin. So this one and this one, similar. Great for piercing, great for slicing, but it won't take as much abuse. So these aren't so much bushcraft knives as they are EDC knives. Next, we have this guy, which is the Watchman 221. So this is the 222. This is the 221. This one is very small. Obviously, we're looking at a much shorter knife here. We got about 2½ inches of cutting surface on that blade. Overall, this one is just coming out right at 6 inches. And the handle needs a very specific hand size in order to fit. For me, this is a 3-finger knife. It's a pretty good 3-finger knife. If your fingers were too much thicker than mine, yeah, it just really wouldn't fit your hand too well. So somebody who has very small hands, and you can get 4 fingers in there, those points are not going to be super comfortable. So medium to large size hands are going to fit that pretty well. Again, I have XL size hands, but I have relatively thin fingers. So locks into my grip pretty good, but you are talking about a 3-finger knife here. I can't really get much of a grip with my little finger on that knife. So this makes it a smaller task knife. Somewhat of a choil there. It's not really enough to put a finger in to choke up on it. Choking up, you're probably going to do a pinch grip on this knife. It's very easy to get your finger clear up by the tip for fine reinforced tip work, but this is a good, I would call it a backup knife, right? That's too small for me to want to carry as my primary knife, especially if I'm carrying a fixed blade. But if it fits your hands, nothing wrong with that little guy. I like the Wharncliffe blade. It makes a good compromise for such a short blade so that you're not dealing with stuff slipping off the end. It's going to cut in pretty aggressively. There's enough of a rocker there that you can get it on a flat surface okay. Even with my knuckles around the knife, I can get most of that blade down onto the surface of the table. If I use my ruler here to demonstrate, even before my knuckles hit, I'm getting most of that blade on there. So having the blade out in front of your fingers like this, in this direction, is a really good design for such a small knife. Moving on, here we have the 220, Watchman 220. This one is a little bit more awkward. So right on 3-inch cutting surface, the whole knife is going to come about 6 3/4, not quite 7 inches, probably not even quite 6 3/4, just a hair over 6 1/2. This one has a much thicker blade than the other. So if you compare this with that 222, you can see how much thicker the blade, how much sturdier the tip is there. Some jimping halfway up the blade here for thumb work or finger work like that. Much more durable design. This would be a great backup skinner, again, if it fits your hand. In my hand, I get 3 fingers up in here, and then my little finger falls right on the pointy spot of that part of the handle. So this handle is really not comfortable for me. I can choke back on a little bit and get my little finger around it this way, and it's all right. But this one just didn't really call to me because it's a little bit of a rounded handle. It's not very deep this way. In my hand, this handle with a little more meat toward the back and without this pointy bit was just so much more comfortable that I ended up going with this one. So nothing wrong with this knife. If it fits your hand, it's a great sturdy skinning profile. This would be a good EDC knife if you know you're going to abuse it a little bit, because it's inexpensive, it's a thick blade, just a great small knife design. Again, if your hand fits it. If you wear a size small glove, you're going to get 4 fingers right in there, and it's going to lock you in, and it's going to be perfect. Once again, very similar sheath. They've just done a great job of making a nice high collar on those sheaths so that it funnels the knife down in there really easily, and then locks into place securely without having the knife tip down toward the handle, which is not what you want on a knife that you're going to carry in your pocket or on your belt. All right, last one here is the Watchman 217, and this one is just a much larger knife. So blade length on this one, we're looking at 3 1/4, almost 3 1/2 inches of cutting surface on that blade. And the overall knife is coming in right at 8 inches. So this is just a bigger knife. It's also very thick. Again, we'll compare it to the 222. You can see massive thick blade stock, really thick tip. I would call this one it's almost like an Alaskan Skinner shape. It's very much that swept back Skinner knife shape. Even in my XL size mitts, there's extra handle there. And my fingers don't fall exactly in those finger choils. This one's about perfect. This one's too big. Unless you've got really, really giant mitts, it's going to feel like you're being forced to put your finger right on the point of that. It's not sharp, but this one's obviously designed for somebody with 3XL size hands, you know, your bear paw hands of somebody who's a gigantic human. You could almost sand this down and chop off that lanyard hole and have, you know, even for my XL size hands, a decent fitting knife. Enough of a difference in the width to the height of that handle to be very comfortable, and it's definitely not going to spin in your hand when you're cutting something hard. This one could double as a small bushcraft knife. Very, very much a sturdier knife than the other ones. It would be a great skinner. You could probably clean some fish in it with in a pinch, although I prefer a flat grind for getting into the little areas where you need to with cleaning a fish. Much bigger, much sturdier. I do want to get some weights on these. Let me grab my scale and we'll do some weights. We'll go in reverse order here on the weights. The 217, the big guy, is 4.76 ounces. So that's definitely on the heavier side. The 220, smaller skinner, we're looking at 3.6 ounces there. So that's, you know, that's not bad. That's very carryable on a fixed blade. The little guy, the 221, that's only 2.61 ounces. So this is very much a legitimate lightweight carry. The 222, my favorite. Again, it's going to be slightly lighter because I ground a little bit off on that choil. 3.68 ounces. We're probably only looking at like 3.69. So we're still under 4 ounces quite significantly with this one, my favorite. And lastly, the 205, 3.41. So you can see where, you know, losing that little finger guard, even though you get a little bit more blade on this one, does save you some weight versus the 222. So that is my look at the Watchman series of fixed blades. Hopefully that is helpful for your decision with buying them. I would say that if one of these fits your hand size, absolutely go for it. For the price, you know, even though the edge retention maybe isn't as good as 14C could potentially be, it's better than almost anything else you're going to find at this price. In the $20 to $35 range, like I said, the most expensive of these is $32 right now. That's a really good deal. 275 cuts in my edge retention test for a comfortable, you know, otherwise durable knife that already has a decent sheath with it. I really don't know of anything else on the market that's that economical and this effective for anywhere near that price. So definitely check these out. Again, hopefully none of these are copies. You know, always to my viewers, please comment down below if you do see one that's a copy. I don't support intellectual property theft, but these are in their own right just really good little knives. Hope that is helpful. Have a knife day.